This is a very special topic to my heart. Basically, it's for all my fellow Humes, beings in a body, who experienced the lack of safety, stability, or something here. Hi. And they notice that they can't get ahead. And god damn it, I want to help you get ahead. I know about this because I was gifted similarly. And the idea is basically like, there's this thing that you want to do, but you can't or you won't. And while there is some conceptual lineage around those, that's basically like, well, you could be like already, arguably you like sort of are. So it's like saying like, not that you're saying that you're not, but you know, like you want to be doing it more different or be able to measure it. And so what I'm seeing is the choice that we make in safety and love is creative and progressive. And it's saying, hey, it's okay for me to, I am safe psychologically and physically to take this step and do this thing. What is so special is that the not experience of that doesn't show up as like, I don't feel safe to express. It shows up as like, oh, let me have this fixation with my body or this problem or this lack of resource or this relationship or well, this set of circumstances. It doesn't look forward, it looks side to side or it looks back or maybe really far within. And I think this would be particularly interesting to you if you're somebody that someone who is doing the thing looks at and says like, well, why don't you just do it? You just have to do it. Why can't you just do it? If you want to do it, you just do it. And you're like, I fucking try. And like, it won't change or I can't get it to stick. So the first, like if that's you, this is for you. And the first thing, god damn it, is to let yourself feel some like love and respect for you because of that. Yeah. So now, instead of being like embarrassed or frustrated or sad or angry or whatever that you haven't been able to just like do the thing, love yourself, because that is a fucking tension-riddled experience to have. And you deserve some appreciation for sticking around for it and not giving up. So, I don't know what your self-appreciation practice is like. Sorry. But if it was like mine, I didn't understand what that meant. I thought that if I read myself some affirmations in the morning, I am this, I am that, I am this, that would be the same as appreciating myself. And at some points it is, and it's definitely like not appreciating you. But the best way to show appreciation and love for yourself is to be in acceptance of your current state of expression. Because if you are not, you are in denial of self. So in acceptance of current state of expression basically means like, I'm doing this thing or I'm not doing this thing. This is happening, this is not happening. I have this or I don't have this. And that's okay. It's okay. It's okay. When we take that, when we start to press the okay button, sometimes we're afraid like, well, I'll never go forward. I'll never change. If I say it's okay to be overweight, if I say it's okay to not pay my bills, if I say this is okay, then I'll never do it. No. We're not saying you never will do it. What we're saying is that up until this point, you haven't, and you're not currently. And the emotional resistance that you feel relative to those facts is what we are accepting. So we're saying like, acceptance means you allow yourself to be able to own it in a way that you could stand in front of people and say like, yep, doing it or not doing it. Oh well. If you can get to that place within yourself about the thing that is, this is how much I weigh, this is how much money I have, this is the state of my relationships, this is where I'm being a dick, and you can get to a place where you say like, well, I I see it. It is. Okay. Then things will move for you. But if you stay in a place of like, well, let me tell you why I did it like that, or this is why it's not working, or this is how I've been hurt, or this is what I'll do later whenever I can get it, and if I force myself in this way, and if I do this, if I can figure out this thing, if I can do this, that is not acceptance. And that distinction of like acceptance, not acceptance, like, or the definitions around it can be a little like, I being like a Western Pennsylvania raised, like, gotta be hardworking girl, but they don't actually have this accent. It didn't, things being like not having pressure or not like being in acceptance, like it didn't fit. It was like, okay, so I just give up, like I don't care anymore, or like I don't try, or that I'm being lazy. It's like no, those are all separate things. You're mixing up your concepts. The concept that we're talking about in surrender or acceptance, which is an essential step on your way to anywhere new, is basically saying, I come to terms with this in a way that I no longer have negative emotion when I reflect on this being the state of my reality. I think that's the best I've ever said it. I hope I remember to write it down. But basically, it's like it's not surrender in the way that you're like, I'll never change this. This will always be. But it does mean that you come to terms with the possibility that it might, because that takes fear out of the system. That's a fast way to alleviate a panic attack, or like the coming ons of one. Maybe if you're already having one, that won't work, or like even like coming depression or laziness or anything. If you approach it from a standpoint of like, maybe I'll always feel this way. If this is the way that I'm going to be, then what can I do? And you kind of like allow yourself to imagine setting camp up in that disability, then it relaxes some of the tension or the frustration in the system, or like the emotional anguish of having to change it, or why it's not somewhere else, and how are you going to get it, and what if it doesn't happen, and what if anybody else do, like all of those kind of they close. And so you collapse this problem that's like multiplying by the second to like much smaller, a much more digestible experience. And you do that by saying like, okay, well, if this is always this way, what will I do? If I never have any more energy than this, if I never have any more money than this, and this is the rest of my life, how do I make the most of it? Because that's really your only choice. If this is your circumstances, if you're working with gravity, if you're working with 2 arms, if you're working with 1 arm, if you're working like whatever you're, no parent, 7 kids, whatever, like whatever you're working with, if you say like, all right, this is my plot of land, this is my plot of life, this is what I'm working with, so what can I do with it? Rather than saying like, but my plot has this, that plot has that, and my plot's not, how am I going to get my plot? It's like, no. You keep the vision in your heart, which basically means the hope that you'll be able to build something that's beautiful to you. So you keep the vision here, but you keep your eyes here, and you say, what would make this more beautiful? What can I do with this set of circumstances that exist for me currently? What would make them more beautiful? And often that choice is an internal response or an internal choice not to hate on this being the way that it is. So if you just kind of pretend like that's your disability and you have a choice to make the most of it or not, if you say like, okay, I come to terms, I accept this, and I'm going to choose to make the most of it, then you can do something with it. But otherwise, you're just pushing against life and yourself. It seems really silly, but I think of it like bandwidth, or like simple rather. So you've got like 10 hands. If 4 of your hands are busy explaining why things aren't the way they are, they're not helping you change them. If 5 of your hands are worried about how somebody else is going to think about you and or not like you relative to whatever you've got going on, those aren't helping you move your shit forward. And it doesn't even have to be like from a force standpoint. Like, let's say like what seems to be very true and counter to the way that we're conditioned to operate in Western culture is that it's supposed to be easy. like, and natural. And when you take your mind, you pull your mind away from trying to control certain outcomes or understand things not in this exact second, then you're like, you tighten the system up that would just like flourish on its own. It's like, I don't have to walk this flower through blooming. It just like does it. But if I sit here and I'm like, you should do the left petal first, like, this is basically how we think we can like control ourselves. That's not fun. We're just kind of unfolding. If you can, another helpful perspective hack is to look upon yourself as if you were like a really cute puppy or like a baby. Like you don't like, you're not mad that the baby doesn't do algebra yet. You're like, well, the baby just decided it wants to do algebra. Of course it's not that good at it yet. It's never seen it. So let's like give the baby some time to learn algebra. Or like this dog needs to sleep because it was up for this many hours, or this dog's probably stressed because it's been through this amount of like external stress, or like these external forces. Maybe like, I'm not going to starve my dog. I'm not going to overfeed my dog. Like, if you can start to see yourself from this vantage point of like, here's this precious thing for me to care for. This is, if you looked at it like just sort of like, you wouldn't take things away from something that was growing, and you wouldn't have expectations that it should grow different than it is. You just kind of be like, okay, well, this is what's present. This is what I'll tend to based on what I see. It needs this kind of water based on this is what I see is, but it's going to take time for it to occur. So I can't be, there's no point bandwidth wise. There's no point in me spending bandwidth on emotional response to something that's like uncontrollable. It's just like a lot of the emotions are inefficient, and we only perpetuate the experience of them because we don't know what it would be like if we didn't, or we're not sure that we didn't even know we could do different. I opened this conversation today with the hopes of talking to so I was talking about how extreme experiences or trauma of some type can impact our ability to feel safe to express forward or grow forward. And we look at the activities that we're doing or we're not doing as the problem as to why we're not doing this or why we're not doing that, but they're just a symptom. And so it's not that the body necessarily needs to be retrained so much as like just like the feelings of safety need to be practiced again, or the like kind of dismantling of the fences that we put up for safety, and say like, okay, well, I put this fence up because of this event. Is that a good one? Like, do I want to keep that up? Is that helping? I'd say like, okay, so this is personal. I'm kind of like on the trippier side, or not trippy, but like, hey girl, the way that my mind is oriented, or the way that I've developed thus far, I have a practice of trying to understand patterns. It's like, here is this way that I'm feeling, here is this thing that happened. Let me look at everything ever to try to understand how this came to be. And so this thing I can either keep or not keep, do or not do again. So it's like, my mind is like, great, let's sort through this information. However, that doesn't work. And it's impossible. You can glean information for that for sure. However, the things that you record from that analysis will actually probably negatively impact your decision making going forward, because they won't be specific to the new place where you're making decisions or the new state. They'll be old. And so if you're like religiously using your don't do this thing from your analysis, you're going to miss the opportunity to make a choice that feels good here, because you're not here. You're with your guidebook. So it's like, so even though I know that practice is detrimental to me because it takes away bandwidth to what I can actually affect. My mind or the amount of pain or trauma or etc. has had like twisted in such a way that it's like it does that automatically until like I'm retraining it, but like it goes there. And one thing that really stood out is like, okay, so if that happens, then what? Like what choice do you have? It seems like only to notice that the things that it's bringing up and all the work that it's doing is not, it's like, here's this box. In this box, all of that analysis occurs. All of this information is sorted. But this box isn't complete or real. And so you don't have to think about like making things work in the box. You just need to notice that you're in the box and be like, oh, well, that's useless. So I'm just going to jump out. And then your mind will probably jump back in and you say, that's okay. Like, see, you really love it in there, huh? You got some friends? Like, okay, cool. Nope. We're going to jump back out though. And I've been visualizing it like, a stage drama where there's like this beautiful like wood floored stage, and I see actors and all this drama and stuff occurring on the stage, and then I remember that is just stuff in the box. That's not real stuff for me to work with. And I try to like throw the curtains and just look for like the sun or the truth behind it, like the safety that's present, the love that's present, like the life that's here. And it's like just kind of practicing turning the volume off this thing that's, again, like it's not helpful and it's not real. One way to consider that, and like this is kind of how I experience reality, and I'm not sure if everybody does or whatever, but I sort of experience life, like my reality relative to my personal vantage point. So reality relative to Shaylee as like this diamond with all these different cuts. And depending on how I'm holding this, the reflection or the light that reflects back to me is different. And so imagine that this is an event or a person. When I spin it this way and I look at it in that direction, I can conclude this is good and this is bad. But if I spin it this way, I'm like, oh, fuck. Well, then this is this and this is this. And so the net effect of the diamond, like is this a good or a bad thing, changes depending on how I spin it. Because if you think of something even like in the context of time, like time would be a facet of this or a face of this. When something's really sucky, like that's bad. This moment is bad. But maybe following that with some level of growth or grace or understanding or perspective. And so then like when that timeline's a little bit bigger, when you hold that event a little bit differently, what reflects back is like gratitude and well, that was good. That was good. And so what I'm saying is like in this box where we're analyzing and sorting, it's sort of like this. We can organize or pull in information different ways to conclude different things, but none of it's really helpful because it is all of them. And so you want to try, like one wants to try to organize one's mind to come to rest. So it's saying like, I can be safe because I know these factors and I can make decisions because I know these factors. But then as it twists or moves, like that's not quite complete. And so you're forever kind of like moving around this Rubik's Cube without getting really any satisfaction, because if you're sensitive, you probably know it's not the whole way true, and so it never feels done. But that's because it's like it can't be, and so you just kind of have to like shut the show down. It's like, this is not a good use of my bandwidth, and it's not real. 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 And it seems like there is some retraining that you can do for your mental processes on that, that make defaulting to this less. At least that's been true for me. If it's difficult to even get in there to kind of lead that or believe that, what another thing I found to be helpful is trying to relax my diaphragm, which is like, I don't know how many, like, I don't know, like for me, I didn't have awareness from like here to kind of like below my hip bones, like the top of my thighs, from like some trauma. I was like, nah, I'm not going to be there anymore. Like, I don't want to feel that anymore. But as so it's like if someone told me to relax my diaphragm, I like wouldn't have been able to perceive that sensation. But over time, I've sort of practiced bringing myself back into my body. So it's like, okay, let's try to feel what's there for me to feel. Well, the easiest thing for me to feel going that direction is sort of my hip bone. So I'm going to just try to feel around my hip bone. And that basically means like, if you've ever rummaged in a bag for something where you're like, I know my pen's in here, and you're just kind of feeling around for the pen, it's kind of like doing that with your mind and your body. You're just kind of like running the spotlight of it over different areas, trying to open to perceive new sensations. And maybe for like months you don't, but over time, or like with the increase of belief in the practice, you'll be able to perceive things. And kind of helping relax away, like to get the fuck out of my box. Another thing I found is to try to feel my diaphragm, because there's so much like, it's like braced almost in fear. And if you can like relax that, and then relax your organs, and relax your lungs, and relax your belly, and kind of like bring yourself to this place of like, I think of like a leopard that's just kind of like laying. It's like super powerful, super strong, lots of muscles, but like in that moment, like very pliable and soft. And so like you just want to bring yourself into this softness, this safety. And as you spend time there, it seems to like have the same effect. Like, so the mind was generating tension physiologically, and now I'm sort of like going in reverse. So I'm saying like, I'm using my physiology to kind of relax my mind by saying like, no, see, we're safe. See how your body is right now. Like if you weren't safe, you wouldn't be able to feel this, but we're safe right now. I think another thing that's helpful is like when you're in this box, which to me, it's kind of like, it's almost like TV fuzz that turns up so slowly and so loudly, like that I don't even notice. I don't even see it coming. And so like, I'm so caught up in the noise at the point that I don't recognize that it's noise. It's not like there's a sign that comes up that's like, we're about to overthink the fuck out of this for safety reasons. It's like, it's just sort of like, and then before I know it, it's yelling. And by that point, you kind of get caught up in the yelling and think that it's real in a way. Not yelling, it's like, or real. It's more like it's like it's just kind of like if someone was playing a song. It's like if it just slowly in the background and like gets louder and louder and louder, and then you're kind of like singing with, it's just like you start to move in entrainment with it, or like you start to like not identify with it, but you lose your space from it in a way that you think that like, I don't know, it's kind of like standing outside and it starts to drizzle, and then like it starts to downpour, and like you don't notice somewhat, and so there's like, oh wait, you don't if it's downpouring, you don't have to stand there anymore. You can get out. Like it's just because it's raining right here. It's not that the world is ending. It's not that this stuff is happening. It's just like it's raining really hard right now, and so like go inside. And that could mean, for me and people that I've worked with, going inside is not recommended. Like if I try to go in here with this, like I lose. However, if I recognize that this is happening and I try to allow my spotlight to go outside instead of inside to solve, if I go outside to create, outside to make something beautiful, then that also kind of like ratchets it down. And the make something beautiful thing occurs to me as like super helpful and applicable to things like in your entire life. So you could look at like your drawer and be like, okay, how can I make this more beautiful? How could I organize the bottles on the counter to make more beautiful? And so when you're looking for beauty, that's basically like truth and harmony and safety and those other things. And so then it puts you kind of like in alignment with them, because now you're saying like, beauty, love, looking outward, I'm affecting change on my environment, I'm doing things, and they can all be really helpful to just again, kind of like get out of this box, this noisy, like dangerous box. And I say dangerous because it does occur that way to me. And I don't know what it's like for other people, but ones I've talked to and have coached, it feels dangerous because, one, you don't know if you'll ever get out. Two, it's generally affecting your ability to do other things. And so that's scary because it's like, well, I'm in a body, and like people generally use money for exchange, and like there are different people and responsibilities and like their work, and there's all these things. And so it feels dangerous that they might be affected. It feels dangerous that you can't sort information. It can feel dangerous that you might feel powerless to kind of like, it's like if a room is really loud, you can walk out, but if you're really loud inside, where do you go? So I think that it can register as a very dangerous experience, which like heightens the response to it. And that's why I'm saying, like, if you can just grasp for some level of awareness to remember that this isn't helpful and that it's not real, and it's just sort of happening because there's a pattern around it, and that it's just like a natural response. It's okay. It's okay that I'm doing this, but it's not helpful or useful for my awareness to go in here. And so I'm just going to shut this down because this isn't doing anything. And why that, or how that strategy is different than other types of like approach, is I'm saying, like, you don't talk to you about this. You don't try to make sense of this to you. That's engaging in the box. And so if something that you're afraid of, you know that you shouldn't be afraid of, or if there's information that you can't sort because every time you spin it, it looks different. If I'm saying, like, don't engage with that at all. So don't try to figure out what's true. Don't try to figure out who's good, who's bad, what happened, why. Like, don't explain to you why that's useless. Like, don't do anything. Like, just shut it down. Shut it down. Nope. Thanks, but no thanks. And it might happen that you like immediately get kicked back into it, and that's okay. It just takes practice. And I think of it like target practice, where you just kind of have this experience, and that would be like, let's say like joy, safety, grace, love, life. Like, you have this experience, and then when you're not there, which is also like the now or joy, when you're not there, you're somewhere else. And generally, like, the noisier your box is, like, the less experience you have of this. So it's just like practicing, no matter where you are in your mind, in time or space. If it doesn't feel good, if it feels good, you can stay. Although it's like helpful to remember that you could be building out fantasies that are inhibiting your ability to relate to now. But if it feels good, that's probably still okay. It's just kind of remembering, like, oh, I'm not there, so I'm going to bring it back here. Oh, I'm not here, I'm going to bring it back here. Oh, I'm not here, I'm going to bring it back here. And that's mindfulness. That's pretty much what everybody's like sailing these days. But I'm trying to simplify it even further, saying like there's no, I guess I'm just trying to add a little bit more around why that's okay when you feel like there are things you have to fix or understand. So it's just sort of like the perception is that now is not the safest place to be, because you've got to figure out how things are. So later is better. And that premise is false. And it seems particularly true whenever there's a lot happening in the box. And what I'm just sort of suggesting is to try, and maybe this works for you, or maybe this is right for you, maybe it's not. But you can just kind of like remember that if you're not in joy, then you're probably somewhere else, and there's no use in you being somewhere else. And so then the question you only have to ask until you're back here is, or not even question, but you could just kind of like loop. I want to feel good. It's okay if I feel good. I want to feel good. I know that when I feel good, I'm in a position of power. I know that when I feel good, I see things more clearly. I know that when I feel good, I feel confident to go forward. I know what's right for me when I feel good. I know I can, and you just kind of like talk yourself back until you forget that. Or, like I said, engage with something external and try to make it beautiful. And that could be something as silly as like cutting up your Pop-Tart special. Like, it does not have to be profound. It can just be like your socks. what would make my socks drawer look beautiful right now? Something very low bar. And that's the end of the presentation I have for today. Does anyone have any? Thank you for coming. Yeah. It is more, I have been a little hesitant to claim the depth of my experience for a bunch of reasons. Mostly that it's not helpful for me to focus on it. However, it's also not helpful to deny it, and kind of working through that and to acceptance. So it's like I didn't see things, and so they didn't affect me, and the same way, but they affected me at large. So like this thing behind me I couldn't see was moving. I mean, it's tough. You can't really say because like all the different factors. The moral of the story is it's really important to me to talk to, like, I want to get tools to people who feel like there's something wrong with them because they can't do something, and I want to help them see that, or empower them to see that, like, it's just like it's okay, and like how to get to what's, like, how to allow for what's next. So which means that I'm not necessarily talking to people that are like highly functioning, like producing at, like they don't feel, I want to get to people who have been like ass kicked and are hopeless, and be like, yo, it's okay. No, we're going to use that. That's good shit. Sometimes I struggle bringing it back because why does it feel good to stick in the negative sometimes, but I'm happy I see it, catch it, bring it back to positivity. Yeah, why does it feel good to stick in the negative? That's an interesting point, and I think there is like, I think it probably is connected somewhat to an idea of control or intelligence. And so there's some level of like satisfaction in knowing and like seeing comprehension expand or understanding expand. It might be like a dopamine hit. I mean, for me, where it's sort of like, oh, I see this pattern, cha-ching, cha-ching. And so that part of me that thinks it has to do something to keep safe also is like, cha-ching, like, you're doing a great job getting better at this thing that doesn't work. Addicted to our misery, picking a scab. Yeah, and I wonder if like some of that is really just that not safe to go forward, where I think that's really natural for us to grow forward and not do things that hurt. But if we don't feel safe to do that, then it, like, the playing with the misery is like a kind of like an activity that feels like it's doing something, maybe. That's why I'm sort of saying, like, I really have a hard time with the whole spirituality healing thing, because it's a process that's grounded in time, where you're saying like, you're not whole, you have to do this to be whole, or you have to do this to be healed. And that's always kind of felt like off to me. But at the same time, I recognize, or have recognized or experiences the benefits of healing, where I can see where I have more freedom or compassion or perspective or etc. as a process of like the work. But I wonder if that's like still kind of like, not an ego trip, but it seems like all we really need to do is practice this, and that kind of like remedies the rest, where the healing is a different experience. Like, it could just be like a movie you wanted to watch, where it's like, I think it would be cool to see somebody, a game. It'd be cool to see these different slices of this progression, kind of like one of those cameras that captures the same thing through time, or it's like, I would like to see this go through time, like, so kind of dilating a progression or growth. And And I think that's like a valid and fun perhaps experience to have, but it also, I don't like to perpetuate the essentialness of it, because it's never felt to me like it's essential. It seems like kind of like a byproduct of the processing system in place that's inclusive of feeling like you have to have pain or struggle to grow or control or some kind of like awareness of what's happening. And I guess I've seen or experienced it more as like something, it's just sort of like my mind had processed. It's just like my mind processed healing the same way that like my mind processed like society, where it's like, this is the way that it is, so it's got to take time, it's got to be hard, you got to do it harder than other people, you got to have specialty, like all these different things that my mind imposed upon a process that may or may not like require that. Hey, hi. So I guess personally what I've been practicing the most is sort of like this idea that this just now, like, so what anything that I would be thinking about that I need to do to be different, to do something else, is just outside of here and as a result of not comfort here. And so rather than try to answer those questions or play in that space or that reality, I'm practicing allowing myself the freedom to assume the completion and step towards creation. So I have a dream in my heart, and I know that this thing I want to create, I feel it in here. I can get caught up in like, well, first I need to have this, or I need to be like this first, or this piece needs to be like this, or this person, or this thing, or this location, etc. All this stuff before. And it seems like if I can just practice being with whatever discomfort is there around not actually doing a thing now that I think is connected to it, it's kind of like you're always on it, you're always doing it. It's just like, what's your vantage point, and or like, what are you allowing? Like, what experience are you allowing? So the idea that like I wouldn't be on this journey, like I wouldn't be doing what's in my heart, is false, because like there is nothing that is not that. But the experience of it does seem to change, whether it is it's like, it just seems to be very simple. Like, do you say yes to what's present in your life and say, yes, this is the dream of my heart? Or do you say, no, something's wrong, this needs to be different first? And that, like that binary switch, really, I think I talk about that a lot in my presentations, seems to be like the roll up of all self-development, all healing, all everything, is just to be able to say, in this moment, I feel good. And if you only practice being able to do that, it seems like all of the other things are kind of like taken care of as a result. But again, like, it's not wrong to choose to work through those things systematically, but it does also seem like you can also allow for those things to happen while you feel good, rather than feeling tension of not being somewhere else. So I think a pitfall of putting things in time, saying like this, then this, then this, then that, is that you don't feel like you're here, which is where you want to be, what you're doing everything to get, like the outcome. But if you can kind of like try to bring those things together all the time, the idea that I want of it's like, I'm trying to say, like, the tension in time prevents you from enjoying here, because you're saying, I'm not here and this is where I want to be. And I'm saying, if you can kind of like bring those things together, then you're still on the path, but your tension and your experience and enjoyment is different, because you're not thinking that it should be you should be elsewhere, or it should be otherwise, or whatever. You're just sort of like, oh, this is now. Yeah, this is now. So it's like, I'm building something, or I'm going somewhere, or whatever, but like, this is now, and I don't need to rush it or push it or force it or change it or be different, or it's just like, it's going that way. And it's just sort of like, can you relax and go with it and be with it? Like, again, going back to like the focus fingers, like I got 10 focus fingers. Like, if my focus fingers are on where I'm not, then like I'm working with less, and so it'll take me more time to get there. So it's not like, it's just sort of like practicing bringing your whole attention here and feeling safe. It seems like this is kind of what I'm in the lab about. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I was excited about that. I was like, oh, good point. It's trippy because it's such a trick. Like, we'll spend all this time, like, it's like we become aware of ourselves in a new way, and we recognize that the external markers of success are empty. But sometimes we forget that it's true of the internal markers as well, where it's like there is no other place but now. There is no other you but you. So you can wait until you master something to feel good about where you are, or you can accept that it's a process, that's an experience that's unfolding. And it's one of those things where it seems really simple, where to hear it's like, oh, okay, like if it was easy, I would just do it. I'm not saying that it's easy, I'm saying that it's simple. But it can, if you practice letting things be easy, then that's something you get to apply elsewhere. But that can be, it seems like they're just like meta practices, and one is like practicing letting things be easy, practicing letting things be simple that affect everything else. But we get caught in the weeds because that's sort of like what makes sense. But yeah, it's just like, it's a practice. It's just saying like, okay, like what I'm doing now is retraining myself to feel that I am where I'm supposed to be. I am as I'm supposed to be. Things are as they're supposed to be, and they're not. I don't have to hurry up and make something different or get something better or whatever. It's just sort of like, this is where I am. How do I make this what's here for me now? And when I'm not in that space, I just like grab me by the hand. If my hands aren't flailing every which way, which case I grab me by the seat and say like, okay, but let's go back here. What if we just came over here though? Let's just come here for a second. We're going to try to feel your ribs. Can you feel your ribs? Yeah, practice, not perfect. Books around you, head, do, it's yours. Books around you, head, do, it's yours. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm not sure I'm punctuating your question properly, and there might be typos. Can you ask me again? Yeah, it's a practice. But, and this is like the hot off the press shit. Right now I'm recording on my camera is set on A Course in Miracles. So I talked about like sort of like, we'll call it like the problem box, trauma box. We'll just call it like the box of rocks, the rocks box. And this is where like the stuff that you're like intensely thinking about that's not right now, that's not helpful. So this is like, when I did this diagram, I have like the now in the center, and then like the periphery where your mind can go, and I kind of like plot that in time and space. And I'm saying like, if you're not here, like if you're not at the intersection of here and now, like you're like somewhere else. And I'm saying like in that place, sometimes like the conditions are such that they're like more intense than others. And this seems to be a result of a person's like personal safety being affected. And so I'm saying like there are probably, it's like no matter where you are that's not here, it's helpful to remember like all you have to do is kind of like jump out of there and come back to what's here. I was just saying like that can be a little bit more difficult in these black boxes because they have like trap doors where it's like you need to be here. Like the mind is like, you need to be here because you need to figure this out so that you can do the things, so you can be safe. You have to. And like it seems like just trippier or slippery there, more slippery there, at least in my experience. So I'm sort of saying like it doesn't, I forget. The books on the shelf, are they mine? No. My books are in storage in Miami. Yeah, that's all I have today. Oh, the stuff that's hot off the press. Oh, okay. This for you, girl. I'd be interested to hear what you have to think about this. So I'm saying this, everything that exists Actually, I'm not supposed to share this right now, but I will talk. Madeline, if you want to talk offline, I will talk to you about this with you. Hold on, let me just relax. Okay. All right, now I can say. Okay. This subscription to time and space is opt-in. So everything in this whole box relative to the human point of contact, like, you can spend, like, even this idea of practicing doing this is still in time relative to a person. And at any time you can say, like, nah. And, like, remember who you are. That's actually what I've been practicing. That's some shit. That's some trippy shit. Because here is, like, emotion and causal chain and karma and interrelatedness and cause and effect and all this stuff. And it's like, oh, wait. Nah, though. That's a nah. No. See? Yeah, I knew you'd like that. Course in Miracles. It's been hitting me like I've been practicing that in my body, where it's like, holy fuck. It's like everybody on the stage is still in their drama, and you're like, I'm reading a script. I don't like this script. I don't want to read it. And then you don't have to. I'm working on, like, grounding that in my body in a way that, like, I can it's actionable. But I think that's sort of like the destination, where it's like, I'm not this. I'm not this. I think that's what I'm supposed to be talking about, because that really lights me up. All right, that's all I have today. Thank you so much for joining. The joke needs to wear off in the play. Yeah. Can you say more? What do you mean? I found that, like, I've been hesitant to stop, like, completely drop the script, I noticed, because then who's going to play with, like, who am I going to play with? And then am I just, like, alone in a room? And it's, like, also sort of, like, it's, like, it can be, I guess, unhuman. And it's not like it's like you see people, supposedly this is, like, how Jesus did his thing, where it's, like, you see people in that truth, where you're saying, like, you're reading a script. Like, I know that, like, you don't like that script and that script hurts, but, like, that's not you. Like, you don't have to identify with that pain. But that's so counter to, like, the way that we're supposed to feel and be and do, supposed to, like, condition to, that it seems, like, wrong not to engage with that. Thank God I'm talking about this, because I think, like, I don't know about range or what, but, like, I've seen some shit. And so, like, when my focal point is at shit is fucking dark. It's like, in contrast to the experience that, like, I have when I'm light, it's like woof. And somehow, I don't know, it really seems like opt-in at this point, opt-in or opt-out, where I could engage with that story and those emotions or not, like, where I can just kind of be done with them. I wonder if that's true. I wonder how that translates to, like, the energetic body. It seems like instantaneous healing is, like, a thing. TBD. If the next time you guys tune in, I'm levitating or just, like, magicking shit with my hands. You'll know I figured it out. Thanks so much for joining me today. So this will be available on patreon.com later, or at some point, with a summary of the points and just like an easier to digest format if a person doesn't have however many minutes I've been talking to watch. There also will be an MP3 file if that is interesting format for you or helpful for you in your life. My ultimate objective is to make shit. It's like I'm doing like what seems to be like some level of like excavation, and it's like we both don't have to excavate, or everybody specialize and excavate uniquely or whatever. And so like I want to make what I bring to the market as easy and useful to like my constituents or like the market as possible. So like if there's a format or an idea or something that you have, it's like, yo, what you're saying is like helpful. Like here's a great way that I would love to interact with it so that I can focus on doing my thing. Like this is what I would like. This would make my life easier if you did it like this. Like I want to hear that. I really want to hear that. Thanks, guys. Do I feel energy? Yeah. I don't know what you mean, because everything to me like occurs as energy, but I think I can seem to be attuned to translate it a little bit more specifically than others have accepted is available to them yet. General. Because we all can do that thing. And that's sort of like going again back to like the Course in Miracles, like drop the box, like, or just like, nah, opt out is like, not like there's nothing you can't do, but like there's like nothing that you aren't. And so there's like, I don't know, I've been playing with it. It seems transferable, and that like anything I attempt to do is really easy for me now. Like anything that I want to learn like is almost like instantaneous, but I don't know if that's like just practice learning things. And so like my learning curve for learning is really like, it's like this, or if it's just like or if it's that I'm pulling from resources that aren't my own. Holy Spirit energy. Again, like, so to me, everything is like in this closed system of like the experience that we're having. To me, everything is Holy Spirit energy, even like bad things. But if you're talking about like the unphysical, like the unseen, which I guess is still to me inclusive of this system, although I do think that there are systems that interact with our closed system and then within another closed system. So like when I'm talking about this closed system, I'm saying like the universe, like all that is one. Like to me, that's like, this is all the Holy Spirit. Like this is all all forces are one. There's nothing that is not that. So I don't know if that makes sense. Emotion is energy, emotions. Yeah, true that. Which to me is like the energy and motion kind of like goes through a thought framework, and from that it's like refracted through the thought framework in a way that like meaning is assigned and an emotion is felt relevant to that thought. So that's like one sensation, which I differentiate from feeling, which to me is more binary. So it's sort of like, yes, this is good, no, this is not. And it's like not good or bad relative to like anything except this particular second, which means like what's good 1 second might be bad another second. And so like that's how I sort of split them. And then sensation to me would be more like, that's more like incoming information, where emotion like is like outgoing. So energy, like things I feel that are inward moving, although everything's sort of like a feedback loop on my point of attraction or what I believe to be true. Like, but I'll say like when I'm perceiving things externally or even like internally, that's more like translation. It's kind of like looking at like, you know, you do your coffee and you say like, oh, this has hints of chicory and of sticks, and so like you kind of like are refining your like you're like perceiving in greater detail. Yes, it's around us. Sometimes we can feel it. Yes, I particularly feel, I think, Alex, what you're talking about, that particularly happens for me when I'm like a conduit. So it's like I have a client, or I have, I'd say it happens most with clients, but can happen with like, or we'll just say like people who come to my desk. It's sort of like I can feel it whenever I like hold their request or their desire or their belief and like something outside of them, and then I can like I like literally tingle. I think that's when I feel that sensation the most. Can I feel others outward? Can you feel others outward emotion? Yes. That's something I'm working on simplifying my experience of, because I think older editions would have worked to lead their emotions to a better place, what I perceive to be a better place. So I would kind of like match, model, and lead, or I would but I would attempt to use that to better understand their mental models. So like if they feel this way, so there was like a lot more thinking and responding relative to others' emotion, where now I'm just practicing tuning to my own, and like I'm trying to think of like I'm Libra, I'm highly empathic, I'm like all these like sensitive things. When I opt in, when I opt out, I'm just isness. But if I'm opt in to the story, I'm like all these things that can harmonize or feel. I match. And if I'm matching things of the world, it doesn't feel as good as when I'm matching like within, which basically means like to me, that's sort of like when I'm attuned to possibility and love. So I'm matching that. It's like what would feel great to grow rather than like what's everybody else doing. It seems like when I tune that way, it has a positive effect on those around me without me having to effort or stop like my own party to consider. So it's sort of like if I'm just pointed outward and I'm attuned to or adapting to or responding to the emotions that I perceive to be in others, which are largely like a reflection in some ways, that like is it, period. But if I tune inward and I act in accordance with like that, or I harmonize with love and possibility, then that is inclusive of an experience that is positive to the external party as well. So it's sort of like not all B's are A's, but all B's are A's. You know what I'm saying? We can feel people when you connect to God's spirit. Yeah, to be honest, my destruction in the prior year had been so complete and just like so complete that I didn't even like believe that there were other people outside. And it's not even like believe, it's just like I just been railed. Like I just been so whatever that I'm just now allowing myself to perceive other people as separate, which kind of sounds like messed up, but it's like my concept of self had been so distracted that I didn't perceive boundaries. It was just sort of like everything is one, and like the oneness was so real that I didn't see the many. I couldn't participate in the experience of many because oneness was so blinding. So I'll have to get back to you about feeling people and individuality as like their own God spirit, I guess. I mean, I do, but again, but so like what's so crazy is like I can sit here and give you all of these words and stories about this experience, but at any time I can bypass the correction or the whatever of those by just choosing to opt out of what is and act as if I was, or just act as if you just sort of like assume the sale, like do the thing. Not everyone believed in God the same way. Maybe respecting that can help people process things their own way. Yeah, I mean, everyone's experience is so incredibly unique. And I think one of the big things like I try to ground in like my work is like, yo, this is my experience. This is some shit that I found to work. This is like what I've seen. And I think what I actually offer is not so much like those things as like the process, the demonstration of the process, the demonstration of being willing to not give up, the demonstration to keep experimenting. Like, I think really what I offer is more like, hey, this can be done. And I really want to emphasize like that each person's guiding system is unique. And so if someone is guided to me to perceive the energy or the messaging that I offer, great. And I think that's generally, or I would like that to be step towards experiencing it directly. So yeah, like everyone has their own processing system and processing needs, and everyone's so friggin' unique. So yeah, I would love to support that. I'm not sure if I answered what you were saying. Some people believe, but some people know that God's spiritual word exists. Alex, I think, I'm not sure. Some people believe, but some people know that God's spiritual world exists. I think, Alex, I really applaud your, I know that English is like a second or third language for you, and you're doing a really great job, but I'm not sure. Some people believe, but some people know that God's spiritual world exists. I'm going to come back to that. What are your thoughts on emotional empathy? So I talked about that a little bit, and I think our number one duty is to ourselves in a way that we operate in accordance with what feels. It's like if we allowed ourselves to believe in safety, love, and abundance, what choice would we make? And I think that yields the greatest good. Whereas if I am attuned to someone emotionally and trying to make decisions based on their emotional experience, I deprive them of the ability to dismantle any frameworks that are limiting them and also develop their own connection to love or joy or whatever they perceive to be given to them through their connection to me. So it's not like being like cold, hard bitch. It's just sort of, although I don't know if that's really how it comes across. It's more like saying like, I love someone enough to make their emotions their responsibility. And I know that that gives them the freedom then as well. Whereas otherwise it's just sort of like this impoverished dance where neither party is expressing or growing because I have the capacity to pick up their emotional slack. Where it's like, here, let me package and organize this information in a way that would be least upsetting to you. And while I shouldn't, or I wouldn't organize or pass information off in a way that I thought would be harmful for the sake of being harmful, my priority is such that it's like, it's just sort of like knowing where your responsibility line ends for me, where when I have been overly responsible for other people's emotional experience, I noticed that, one, they didn't get real-time feedback about how I felt and where I was for them to make adjustments towards me. So it's sort of like I deprived them the intimacy of connection because I was over accommodating what I perceived to be their needs rather than prioritizing or honoring my own. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's sort of like if we are overly concerned about operating relative to other people, then we aren't, one, we're not authentic. They won't know who we are because we're trying to be whoever they need to be. And then the world that builds out around us doesn't fit who we really are, but who we're trying to be, which requires a lot more effort and then yields ultimately less because there's friction or resistance lost in the system. So I guess, like, to sum all that up, like, emotional empathy, I think, is best directed inward. And if you can come to trust the process and allow things that don't fit to go, then it ultimately works out for everyone, because you're sort of empowering them to be their own advocate while you are your own. And we're really the only ones that know, like, what we individually need. Believe in God, it's believing but knowing that God exists, but sometimes we close eyes on or believe in God, it's believing but knowing that God exists 100%, but sometimes we close eyes or go. Again, like, Alex, when you're talking about that, I think we have some, like, definition differences, because my experience of God is inclusive of everything. So again, it's sort of like this totality of, like, it's this system, this closed system, this oneness. To me, that is God. And so, like, I'm God, this is God, this is God. Like, it's all sort of like God. So I'm using it sort of like, again, like, to me, it's akin to the universe, or like one closed system. And would also be like all things beautiful and all things awful. Other comments? Thank you for asking that question. Yeah. Yeah. And so going back to this whole, like, opt-in, opt-out experience, it's pretty trippy to, like, distinguish, but it's sort of like when we look at, like, I kind of see, like, the opt-in almost as, like, here is this list of items from the grocery store. I can make whatever I want with this list of things, and these are the restrictions and blah, blah, blah. So it's like these things I can do. And then as a free agent, we think, like, oh, I can organize them this way, or I can do them this way, or blah, 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 blah. Like, and this maybe is your life circumstance or your internal condition, or et cetera, whatever, or the way things are in the world. There are, like, fixed pieces. And so you're making decisions relative to these fixed pieces. And when you opt out, you see that there is nothing that's fixed. And you only experience it. It's like you pick what's on the thing, you pick how the things work together, and you pick because of your expectations and your beliefs. And we have a lot of, like, beliefs and expectations that are just sort of, like, passed off through modeling, where it's like, and this is what you put in cups that are shaped like this, and this is what it looks like when two people disagree, and this is what a disagreement. So there's, like, all this stuff that we don't even realize are choices because they're mostly fixed, i.e. they're prevalent enough that we think that this is the way that they are, but this is still written by, like, that. Like, it seems like there is an element of this terrain that does seem like, I don't want to say inherent, but it's definitely a lot less fixed when you step out of the emotional drama, because so many of our choices are, like, chains of, like, emotional, I call it, like, emotional currency, where it's like, hey, that thing that you did was fucked up, but I know I did fucked up stuff, so, like, we'll just kind of we'll just use those against us, rather than, like, me saying, like, this was the fucked up thing I did, allow me to remedy it. It's just sort of like allowing, and then, like, it's like you did the more, let's say like somebody does a favor for you, you feel like indebted to them. And so your next choice is relative to that experience. And so it's not really in freedom. It's sort of like it's like in chains. And so we have these like all of these ways that we think that things are that prohibit us from expressing fully because we try to stay coherent with like the emotional exchanges in place. I don't know. It's like if somebody's, I'm still trying to figure out how to put words to this, but it's like I've been going through a lot in processing, which again is like an opt-in activity. So I opted in to process a bunch of like emotional shit for me around safety and aggression and men and all this stuff. And so I opted in and I'm doing these processes, and someone around me is like picking up a lot, not picking up the slack, they're like witnessing, which is like a lot of crying, or was. It was just like, there was just a few like uncontrollable, like holy fuck, like and just some tension and some like other stuff. So if you don't give people autonomy over themselves, then you feel indebted to them in a way that, one, might not be grounded in anything, but two, inhibits both of your freedoms. So it's sort of like, how can you respect that a person, you as long as you're trying, like, it seems like, try to say like, hey, I recognize this is the strain I might be putting on the system. If they opt into that or they choose to participate, that is their choice. And so it's not like you owe them something later because they did this thing for you. It's like they opted in, there was something there for them at that moment, or if they put it in time, that's like their choice. But whatever reason, like, or if they're just doing it because, which seems like the best reason to do anything. But if you see that as something that like needs to be repaid, then it changes the trajectory and the choices you would make when there's nothing really need to be repaid because something was given, and like we're all given all the time. And I think that's not really like the best example, but there are ways that we perceive and organize our minds around each other's emotional experience that prohibit us from just acting new or taking new things or doing or being new things, because what about all the other stuff? But that's still in mind, where like at any given time, like I see like this web, and like in the web of the mind, like what choices you can take are limited. But like if you can kind of like open the mind to just be present to a possibility, then I don't know, you can draw. That's kind of like the opt-out strategy, where it's like, I can't really word it yet. It's still pretty new to me and seeing it from this vantage point, but just the unnecessariness of the chains that we put upon ourselves and others through expectations of like relative to emotional exchange. Like even like love, like somebody giving you love, it feels like, oh, you have to give love back, or you have to, because they love you, you have to do this or be that, or because they love you or they worry about you, that's your responsibility. Like, it's like, but no, but really there's no. And it doesn't mean that there isn't mutual care. It just is remembering that is like an at-will choice that is best made in the individual's autonomy. And so sometimes there's manipulation that pulls emotion or support or whatever without transparency. And so the party that gives without consent it's not quite the same as like making a choice in autonomy, where you're misled perhaps to give when you would not have given originally. So then it's sort of like your agency has been removed. But I think when I see that, I think still of like the simplicity of like, if you can let things feel good or not feel good, and that be enough of a reason to do something or not do something, you have some awareness to say like, I hear what you're saying, however, it doesn't feel good to me, and so I'm going to opt out, even though I don't understand why I want to opt out, or I don't understand why I want to, like, whatever. It's just sort of saying like, I don't need to, and so like I have a no in my body, and so I have a no in my expression, and then I have a no in this dealing. But just sort of like, it's I think a barrier to allowing for that is the ways that we feel important through giving love, where it's like, I do this for you, I give you this, so you're going to need me, and so we remain connected, and so I'm assured these different needs are being met for me emotionally because we are connected, because I'm giving you this thing. And it's sort of like when you participate in this like at will free model, it's like nobody has chains on you and you don't have chains on anybody else. And so the only time you're really connecting with somebody is when both people really want to. And that makes for like a much beautiful connection point, but it can be scary going from like, well, what if nobody comes, to like, well, maybe somebody, like there's just some movement around that. But again, that's just something I'm seeing. Like I've been practicing sort of this avatar body, which is like, I'm saying like where it's beyond the story, where I'm stepping out of space and time, and I'm stepping out of all I know about Shailene, I know about everything, and practicing being in that place. And when I'm there, I can sort of see these dynamics, and just sort of like practicing expressing what I see there. Don't know if that makes sense. It's very interesting. With freedom, there's like fear because there's unknowns, and like responsibility, and like there's all these like concerns, I think, that people inherently are conditioned to have around freedom, because I don't know, it just seems like it's easier to not in some ways. Like talking about like anarchy or like beyond a government, it's like, well, if that's not there, then what about these things? And it's like, well, when you're making that transition, there'll be things like, there's like a transition, but there are other, it's just sort of like that, I guess, the fence in, fence out idea, where it's like you keep stuff out, but you keep stuff in, and that's a choice. To me, I'm highly like sensitive to feeling free or not free and my expression, and I think that the trade-off for me might be a little bit different. Like the way that I weight and calculate that might be a little bit different to somebody else who prefers safety, the sensation of safety that they perceive to be connected to the fence. But that might not be real safety. That might just be like, in truth, like if we're like stepping out of time and space, like there's nothing to try to be safe from, because like the ultimate, I don't know, it's challenging I haven't yet been able to express that idea in a world where people can point to pain, like, or lack. But I think that's kind of like inherent in the paradigm of time, and like outside of, I don't know, I'm just practicing out there, and I'll let you know what I find. But I think in that place beyond there, all of those questions are answered, and it's just like getting as many people there as possible if they want. I don't know. I started watching Mary Poppins last night, and I see that as a model for the X-Men that might make sense, where if you haven't watched it recently, I'm talking about the older production with Dick Van Dyke and Julie Andrews. I think it's Julie Andrews. Both of their characters exist in a different world on top of the world that the other characters live in. And and that world that lives in also breaks like a fourth or fifth wall and to the audience, and operates like just a different, like they can do magic and all kinds of cool shit, but it sits right on top of this other world, and still they interact with the world underneath it. And that would just sort of be like regular London. And that's sort of what because I couldn't figure out, or I couldn't see the way that those two realities could play together for me, where it's like, yeah, I'm in this body, I'm in this place, I'm in this thing, and yet I perceive these other things to be true. And so how do I operate relative to others that don't hold that same vantage point? It seems a little bit like Mary Poppins. That's just, I've been looking for, or opening to receive, information to allow for that transition to be easy for me, you know, because I want to. It seems like the next thing. Spoonful of sugar, some fancy snaps. Hey, all right, I stayed way longer than I meant. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming and participating. I really appreciate like the language and like chatting and stuff. And again, I've said like a bunch. The people that interact with me here, I generally like really like appreciate and know, and I encourage you guys to kind of like scroll through each other's names. And if anybody stands out as like a new friend, maybe like open that door, or message me and I'd be happy to introduce you. But I'm really fortunate who I meet on here, and it pleases me greatly to like meet y'all, each other. All right. Thank you so much, Alex. I will think about that, and the next time that we're, yes. Oh yeah. I think you're saying the same thing I'm saying about Mary Poppins. Thanks for coming, guys. Have a great day.